Resume recording. Great. So if you don't already know who I am, my name is Jack Maher. With me is Pavel Azaletskiy. Today, we're going to talk about value stream mapping and how you might consider using value stream mapping as a way to do road mapping for your operations digital twin. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll because I think that's the only way that everybody can see the results. And hopefully you can see the results now. So value streams definitely are the bulk of our backgrounds. I'm really interested in hearing about both the folks from Digital Twin because that's my weak area. That's why Pavel is here. And especially those that are interested in the both and are looking forward at doing this. I've heard some rumblings in the past, but I've never seen anything. Pavel has seen more than I will, and I'm not going to steal any of his thunder. But again, today is really around how you might start down this trail, at least how you might start to begin thinking about this. And it's really going to be based on my webinar around how to create value stream maps. Pavel, no rest for the wicked or the weary. So I'm here around the digital transformation space. Pavel's here from VSOptima, and he's going to talk to us a little bit more about where we see some of these overlaps.
Yeah, thank you. So I believe like value stream mapping is a super powerful exercise that helps people to be aligned about like what are the challenges, what are the performance issues with the value streams exists. And it exists already like 70 years. In the good old days, it was very easy to spot inefficiencies. Even like going to the factory floor, you can spot the pile of raw materials in front of machinery. And this is if it is higher than anything else. So this is most likely the step that you need to focus on optimize. Right now, we are living in a digital world. So we have distributed teams across the globe. Some of them focus on the part of the value stream. So it's very hard to see end-to-end picture and observe, have everyone in the room to really brainstorm. Not to mention the value streams and in general, like the speed of change are so fast right now. So the changes happening in the value stream is also can be pretty dramatic, and it's very hard to grasp how those changes are going to play out if you have only static picture in the time as a value stream map. So this is, I believe, this is something that digital twin can help to deal with, and we're going to talk about how we can combine this approach to really go beyond static picture and embrace dynamic and non-linear behavior of the value streams.
Absolutely. And speaking of which, for those of you that have been around value stream maps for a long time, this is probably going to look pretty familiar to you, although there may be a few additional twists here and there. And that is the traditional value stream map that looks at the flow of value and information, beginning and ending with the customer on all the way through that process. This particular process, I think of it as a product manager, particularly in a software organization that looks at, from a very simplified level in some ways, the flow of information and how we get software through an organization. So you'll recognize many of the features of a traditional value stream map with a few nuances, understanding what ChatOps does to our value streams today, and some of the additional opportunities that you may recall from some of the other times that we've been together, either some of my other presentations or the webinar, where we talk about some of these other value characteristics that are a part of contemporary value stream maps. But even still, beyond that, there's a whole lot of reason for doing value stream mapping. There always has been. The challenge, of course, has been that kind of flat two-dimensional approach that was challenging to set up and even harder to maintain. But we still do value stream mapping in many cases for all the same reasons, so that we can focus on our goal. We can be clear on what our objectives and outcomes are going to be to build trust through visibility and transparency in terms of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how we're doing it. Our continued focus on the different kinds of waste and focusing our resources on those things that are the most important to us, and sometimes eliminating that which is not very important to us. And being able to do this on an ongoing basis, right? We're running a marathon, not a sprint. So this has to be something that's sustainable and a continuous process improvement kind of a environment or mindset. And ultimately, the key to doing the value stream mapping has always been a challenge, right? Which is more important, having the value stream map or doing all the things that are necessary to have a value stream map? All of those conversations that have to happen, those relationships that either begin or are reinforced or improved through the communication, the revisiting of our shared goals and where we're aligned, and finding ways to improve where we're not aligned by resharpening our focus on the customer, who we're serving and what way we're serving them, right? So there's a ton of reasons to continue to do value stream mapping, a ton of value to be derived on the front end as well as on the back end. But where we're really going now is being able to do this on a continuous basis using automation, right? So value stream management, more than just an idea now, it's actually happening. So being able to continually sustain the various types of values, right? And we also now have many different ways to capture, to view, to manage these kinds of value, whether it is the traditional things we're used to or integrating looks at things like our governance and compliance as a value stream, looking at security and our operational characteristics as a value stream, looking at our human resources as being intersecting as well as adjacent with all of these value streams, right? All of that kind of complexity, we can't continue to do that in a one-off way, just as we wouldn't try to manage microservices or containers in a manual way, right? We need tools. We need a better way of doing that than the manual way that's gotten us here for the past 50 years. So
Yeah,
that brings us to the digital twin, right, Pavel?
right. And this is the critical point in terms of how we can embrace changes. So value stream management helps us to really track and see what is happening. But how are we gonna answer the question, what would be if, I mean, right now this is hot topic of layoffs, like the capacity and throughput of value stream is changing. If you're talking about different industries, let's say supply chain management, going back to the COVID, the structure of the supply chain network was changed during the lockdown. Warehouses were kind of blocked, and how you're gonna manage the flow. So we need to figure out how we can use the value stream mapping to really figure out to answer the future stated questions. What would be if? So, and go beyond the snapshot in time, and have ability to verify the policy, as you mentioned. If you're going to change the certain ways of working, what the implications of my speed on my cost of delivery. So therefore, to build in the model, to build in the map, connected to the data layer, that enable and connected to the data layer, this helps us to answer the future stated questions and play with it. So this is the kind of cool thing that we can combine all these notions together: value stream map and digital twin.
Sure. So now we can actually see how these parts work together, how they fit and interact, and the relationships and so forth. And by the way, I don't think I mentioned this up front, and if I did, it bears repeating anyway. If anybody has any questions or comments along the way, it would be much better to go ahead and blurt those out and get them on the table now. If you want to wait till the end, that's okay too. There's also a Q&A feature here. So if you don't want to state it out loud for whatever reason, maybe you want to kind of develop it on your own and then hit send. There's also a Q&A that's not visible to everybody. I'm keeping an eye on that. So if any questions come in that way, I will alert us all and try to summarize that question to the best of my ability. So, every time we look at this slide though, Pavel, especially that simply explainable thing really jumps out at me every single time. It makes me think of the Albert Einstein quote that if you can't explain something simply, it's because you don't understand it well enough. But the reality is that even the value stream map that we looked at a minute ago, it looks really complex, right? There's a lot of stuff in there, but compared to reality, it's oversimplified, right? We can't really use that to predict the future. It's way too simple. It's way too blunt of a tool. So this digital twin really gets us to that next level, right?
Yep.
And so it does at multiple levels, right? So our value streams are going to be at a set level, depending on where we built them and how we look at them. These digital twins, by their definition, go much further than that, right? So they help us understand in the context of the entire domain of those things that we care about, those sphere of interests, where does this stuff, where does this value, where do these capabilities and operations fall in? And then we can share our value targets, right? These are the things we're trying to do right now. And everybody can then align with what those targets are so that we can ensure that we're doing the right things. You know, this comes into the part of the models. Do we understand how a change in one part of the machine will impact a different part of the machine or the output overall? Maybe we make a very small change at the beginning that seems like a really positive change, but because we didn't understand the impacts before, may have had a very negative impact at the end. By having this bigger model, this more observable look at how our overall enterprise, our organization, our organism works, right? And then this is a great way of communicating it. Not just what are we doing, how are we doing it, where is it going, but how is it actually going right now, right? And then to be able to project that forward. So in the past, we've driven these cars of our organizations based on reports, which is kind of like driving based on the rear view mirror. Now we've got some dashboards and stuff, and we can see what's going on current state, but nothing tells us about where we're going. And that's what we really need next, right? Is the ability to see forward, to project. In order to do all of these things, it requires data, right? Do we have the kind of data that's going to be necessary to represent what's happening, to build out the model, to exercise the capabilities, to confirm it, to test the evolution, right? If we have that data, can we get to it, right? Can we get at it? Is it available to us, or has it become so masked or otherwise made not accessible to us? You know, and then if we can get to it, you know, can we actually use it? Do we understand what that data is, the quality of the data, you know, the consistency, if there are things that we should know about that data? And that all gets us to the point then of being able to then use, which is kind of where we are today. We've really pounded this across so many different domains, whether it's in our operations space, whether it's in our system space, whether it's in our software space. So now we're at the point of doing this modeling, and a lot of folks have done a lot of focus on doing this kind of high-end modeling. And then, you know, as we were just kind of alluding to, what do we want to do that for, right? I mean, it's one thing to understand it and see, but what we really want to do is, as you were suggesting earlier, is a what if. You know, hey, what if I make this change over here? So how can we then synthesize all of these evolving and changing things with the data that we have and project forward, right? So all of this is around business clarity. How do we understand what's going on so that we can make good decisions now that get us to where we need to be?
Exactly, and this is whole grail of continuous improvement, right? You need to embrace continuous in the change and figure out what to change to be better. So connecting the value stream map to the data layer, it gives you the transparency. Okay, what is happening now? But given that this is the model, you can explore and experiment with the certain decisions and find the optimal one. So the combination of value stream mapping and digital twin creates this as real implementation of continuous improvement, where you have like your map showing what is happening right now. You can predict what's going to be in future if you do not do any changes. You can play with scenarios. Okay, what if my demand goes up twice, or if I losing capacity in certain extent, or like if you're going to restructure the steps of your operations, what would be the implications? You can make objective decisions and eliminate certain decisions that are not good. But you can do it very fast in the digital space, in the safe environment, before going to the physical world and do some real costly, costly changes. So yeah, it should take a lot of time to make it better decisions.
Right. Sometimes messy changes when we have to ask people to change what they're doing or do something differently.
Yeah.
So yeah, we talked about the value stream maps and the fact that really these won't get us to where we need to be next. They're just not dynamic enough. And look at the flow. So we're going to look, though, at, we do know that this is a very effective way to look at, to communicate, what we are talking about from the conceptual perspective, and to build up the components that can be assembled then into the digital twin. So we're going to look at how we can approach value stream mapping. This gets to the core of the webinar, which might have been why you came here, along with just the interest of the conjunction with digital twins. We're going to look at this from the perspective of planning out our value stream mapping approach. We're going to talk about the teams that we need to get together. We're going to then look at this from the perspective of doing it as a 2-day event, whether it's virtual or in person, we can talk about. And then we're going to talk about sustainability. What happens after this event? What we don't want is what we've seen far too often in the past, where we come up with a beautiful value stream map, we hang it up on the wall, everyone gives us, a pat on the back, and then it hangs for another 10 years until somebody looks at it again. It's not what we want from this. We need something that's going to be usable and go forward. As with anything that's worth doing, planning is 90% of the success rate, right? If you put the time and effort in, you may have heard in the past this saying about the 5 Ps. Prior planning prevents poor performance. And that's really the case with doing your value stream maps. This is what's going to make or break your success. Doing the planning and then continuing to leverage this approach and the structure for the execution and managing of this process, because it won't be a set and forget. You're going to have to actually manage this process all the way through. So let's look at a few things that you need to think about up front for your value stream mapping process. Number one is you should think about how you're going to manage this event. There's a lot of work, and there will be an absolute ton of people that will need to be involved in this process in one way or another, either working on the process or being impacted by the process. In this, you want to start off with, how do you want this event to move forward? Do you want this to be kind of a retreat where you sequester your team, give them some private space, maybe even off-site, to go work together, to come together as a team, to focus on what they're leveraging, and then bring it back to the organization? Or you want to do this more like a conference. Maybe you set up a conference room within the organization or on your campus, so that other folks can come through, have some insight as to what's going on, awareness of what is happening, be part of the process in a controlled or whatever way. You also should think about whether you want someone who is internal to the organization or an external resource to do this facilitation, whether it's on-site or off. There are pros and cons to each. Certainly having someone who is internal, that knows the folks, that knows the resources, that knows where things are and how things are done, can really get things going more quickly in some cases than someone who doesn't know the people or the places, etc. However, if you're going to make significant, meaningful change as a result of this activity, which you better be doing as a result of this, then that meaningful change is likely to create political unrest and challenges for that individual if they are internal. So you'll need to be very clear on the career progression and create a safe environment for any internal facilitators, right? Pros and cons to all of these decisions. You need to make sure that before you initiate anything in this process, that you have the right kind of leadership. And specifically, we're going to talk about executive sponsorship right now, because there should be changes that come as a result of this value stream mapping exercise. And you'll need someone who has the ability to make, authorize, fund, and otherwise direct some of those changes that may need to have happen. We're also going to be looking at what people are doing on a day-to-day basis. And that's going to be very challenging for a lot of folks. You may feel a lot of resistance, especially depending on what the historical or current culture is, or in the relationship between those that are doing the work and the leadership or management of an organization. So having a servant leadership role, particularly, and we're going to talk more about this from an authentic leadership perspective, is something that you should consider in how you structure or choose your leadership or leadership team. In the team overall, You need to make sure that you've got enough folks to cover all of the work, depending on the breadth and depth of the scope, based on the challenges that you're trying to get after. You'll need to have enough folks, and they'll need to invest time, and you need to ensure that they have the support of their organizations to be able to fulfill the obligations to complete this work in the time needed. We also need to make sure that we're real clear. Those of you that have been in a project world, project charters, that kind of thing, still applies here. We need to understand what's the scope. What are we trying to do? We can't boil the whole ocean. Are we trying to cover a department, a division, an entire enterprise? And where are we going to focus our efforts, and where are we not? Where are the things that maybe we don't want to mess with that? Maybe we've got some special operations. We've got a skunk works out in the suburbs that just are not part of our standard operations. We can carve some of that kind of stuff off. Most importantly, we need to make sure that these teams and the folks that are doing this work have access to all of the information that they'll need and that will help them to do this. That means tons of access to IT systems. Now, it doesn't mean you need to give them carte blanche access. You may need to have some resources with them, some very highly placed resources with access to be able to span all different kinds of IT systems, provide reports about current state performance. You also are going to need a lot of information about how your organization is performing in and of itself and within the industry. You'll want to look at how you are doing versus your competitors, what your costs are versus the other folks in your industry. Now, putting all of this together means you're going to have places for meetings. You're going to need place for the team to work and get together, places for them to conduct interviews. They're going to need tools, whether it's whiteboards and Post-it notes, and all of those kinds of things, as well as transportation and meals, right? We shouldn't have people here that are trying to figure out how they're going to eat or rush off somewhere. If we're going to take people to a different location for our Gemba, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we need to make sure that we've got transportation, and all of that is organized so that we're not fighting traffic or showing up as shifts are changing, those kinds of things. And then we need to make sure that we have all the information that we have about our current organizational structure, and in particular, any process documentation. This frequently becomes the real Rosetta Stone of an organization. What processes have you documented? What has risen to the level of importance that you've bothered to document it? And what does that look like, and who is involved? Tons and tons.
Yeah, sorry.
What's that?
Yeah, just like wanted to ask about how the team gonna look like to make it happen.
Absolutely. And you're going to look in some of these places, or look in different places depending on the organization, right? So, for example, I went to a software development organization, and they were CMMI registered, right? That CMMI registration had all of their processes laid out, and what was important to them and how they were measuring it and what it meant to them. In a manufacturing organization, I went to their QS 9000, 9001 registration, same kind of information. In a financial services and insurance organization, went to the PMO and all of their projects and all of their process, project processes was the keys to the kingdom. So you'll find a lot of this stuff, but you got to go looking for it. But we need to get together the right team for this to really happen, right? So first of all, leadership, and we're going to circle in on each of these, a little bit of more detail. We need to make sure that we get the leadership within the team and outside of the team straight, as far as at least knowing what we've got. And there are some pretty good things that we can do to make ourselves be more successful. We're going to talk a lot about measurements and data. We need to measure everything, and there are some things that have always seemed hard to measure that may not be as hard to measure today, and we'll look at some of those. We're going to talk about where we start and how we finish and where we're going, but the most important thing is no matter where we think we want to be, no matter where we think we are, the reality is we're going to start with where we are today, even if that's behind where we thought we might be. And we're going to talk about different types of communication and where that needs to go. From a leadership perspective, we need to have the right kinds of leaders involved in this. Number one, we need to have the formal leaders. In my book, I talk about those leaders that have the juice, right? That have the skill, the capability, the resources, and the power to make changes in an organization. They've got the resources to dedicate budget. They can change organizational structure. They can do those kinds of things. They have the ability to reach across the organization, across the breadth of whatever we need to make changes to, so they're not just in one piece of this. So we need that formal leadership, somebody that's got a title and probably is a heavy hitter in our organization. We also need those informal leaders, right? We might think of them as the rank and file. We might think of them as someone who has been a part of this process. Maybe they are from the labor pool. Maybe they, have a long-standing relationship that says, hey, just because they say we should do this, we need to make sure that it's right for ourselves, right? This healthy skepticism, someone that's ready and willing and able to stand up for, those parts of the organization that may not be as represented or may have a challenge with a voice against senior leaders, right? So we want this to have two different kinds of leaders. And if you haven't thought about leadership from that perspective, one of the books I would highly recommend is Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last. It looks at why Marine officers ensure that all of their Marines eat before they eat, which, if you know anything about the Navy, is the opposite way of the way the Navy approaches things, or the Army for that matter, which speaks more to my experience. Fantastic book, fantastic author. Highly recommend Leaders Eat Last. All of this is great, but show me the data. Who was it that said, "In God we trust, all else bring data"? Here are some of the things that we can use to measure the results that we're getting from our value streams. So when we are making our changes, these are the things that we can measure to see if we're getting improvements as expected, right? So if we start at the bottom, that's going to be the easiest of all. You can do this absolutely for free with SurveyMonkey, right? A Net Promoter Score, whether you're using that externally with your clients or whether you're using that internally with associates, a real simple of, would you recommend this to somebody else or not? Mike, you got a question or a comment?
No.
Okay, cool. So, that real simple way to go, whether it's internally focused or externally focused. Moving up counterclockwise, you may have heard of Gallup and their Q12 or their 12 questions around engagement that start off at the very basic, which you might think of as being like the bottom of the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? As an associate in this organization, do I know what is expected of me, right? And then do I have the tools to do that? And working our way up to self-actualization, or how do we grow together, right? How do we get better? And then, there are the KPIs that we're used to that we've probably gathered forever because they were the low-hanging fruit. Many of us are getting better about our objectives and key results, the OKRs, and really starting to focus on those things that are of value to us, not just those things that are easy to count. Where it gets tougher still for a lot of folks, when we talk about, things like culture or how do we measure intangible value, that's where there's some, a lot of room still for some art, as well as the science of really making sure that we are capturing this kind of information so that we can get to the better decisions of the value and our alignment of our resources and our capabilities and our focus on those things that we really care about. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, death threats? So far, so good.
Yeah, feel free to jump in. So we have Q&A. I can read if you put the question here. Yeah.
I haven't seen any questions come up so far. So last on that series, I think it was the last on that series of slides, I'm not a good counter, was around communication, right? So there's a lot of communications, and that's really, what we keep coming back to time and time again. Every step of this process is really around communications. First of all, within the team, we need to make sure that, that we are communicating well with each other, that we maintain this respectful approach. We're going to find that in this very short period of time, there's a ton of work to be done. And the kind of people that we're going to have doing this are probably going to take that, as a real challenge. And so sometimes tempers might flare as hours run long and as opinions may sometimes conflict. We need to make sure that we continue to be transparent within the team. This is what we're seeing. This is what we've measured. This is what we're thinking. Be respectful, be constructive, and make sure that the team is continuing to move forward. Communicating outside of the team to leadership, we need to make sure that we continue to be very honest and transparent with the leadership of what's going to be doing. Jonathan, I think the answer to your question is yes, but you'll tell us at the end. And there's also a lot of other components we're glossing over. To the organization, we'll also need to let folks know, hey, this is going on and this is what we're doing. This is why we're trying to do it. We want to be directional about the kinds of positive outcomes. We want to be inclusive of those folks that are involved in these processes and those that aren't, that may see it going on and aren't as clear about what's going on, so that they can have their own informed opinion, and to be inspirational about this is something that we are going to do together, that we're going to go after. There are a lot of tools. I really highly recommend you leverage organizational change management tools in this process. We can very easily predict how people are going to respond in general and at an individual level. The Kubler-Ross change curve model looks at how we know people will respond when they first hear of a change and their reaction to that, usually not positive, right? And then as they begin to get on board with that, much like the stages of grief, we can very easily understand these non-linear but generally associated behaviors. Also at the population level, those folks are going to be early adopters, like those folks that camp out in front of the iPhone store when there's a new model, versus those folks that are still carrying flip phones. Or I saw an ad for BlackBerry yesterday. They're still alive, right? So, there's going to be folks across it, and we need to communicate that to them using AdCar or other models to help communicate the right messages to them in their personal and shared journeys through the changes that are going to come as a result of this process. Okay, so we're going to start off then getting everybody together for the team. Then we're going to create the first cut of our value stream map, what we think it's going to look like based on where we are and what we need to do. And then we're going to go to talk to the folks that are actually doing the work and see what they have to say. Now, again, as we get together as this team, we need to make sure that our team is clear on what are we trying to get out of this process? What are those tangibles as well as any intangibles? What are the things that we absolutely must get out of this? And do we have any, things that we can also, maybe talk about? In this, making sure that the team that has a wide variety of folks, ranging from hopefully a senior leader to a work level or other person in the organization, we should think about the way the folks at the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels, when they do their after action reviews after the air shows. All those ranks come up. Doesn't matter if you're an admiral or a captain or the single stripe enlisted. Everybody's opinion counts. Everybody is dealt with respectfully. Everybody is humble. That they're all there to focus on the outcomes. We don't want to be judging anybody or making anybody feel like they're not doing what they should do. This is about understanding, about getting information, right? It's all about facts. And we need to make sure that we truly understand what's happening, because there will be dysfunction at that team level. There will be pain, and we need to feel that. We need to be able to understand that and address that. Now, in order for us to do that, we've come up with what we believe to be the value stream map, the first iteration. We're not stupid. We've been around. We've got the data. We've done the research. We've laid that out. Now we're going to go follow that and see where it takes us, right? So we start off with whatever is the beginning of the process for us. This is usually based on the type of organization, possibly the culture. And that is, where does this happen? Does it start in the sales center when a call comes in from a client? Is this something that marketing drums up and we get all of these responses back from the website? Is this a new version or a new product from engineering? So wherever that starts, we begin the process there again with the customer in mind. And we're going to walk through that process, collecting as much information as we can about what's going on and understanding it from the perspective of all of the people that are involved in this process. Now, when we get there and we're talking to the people at the Gemba, it's kind of like a standard brainstorming event, right? We're not evaluating, we're not judging in the moment. We are just collecting. And this is no plant tour either, right? Because we've got a lot of information that we want to gather. Some of it will be directly, much of it will be just by observation, right? So we need to look for things like, what does the overall environment look like? Again, if you've got a lean background, the 5 S's, you know, is it neat? Is it orderly? Is it straight? Are there quality standards? You know, do these people care about what they're doing and where they work, right? Things that we should be looking for. Is there a lot of raw material laying around? Is there a high reject rate or scrap rate? You know, is there a lot of context switching? Are people being asked to switch between different kinds of work? You know, what does the scrap rate look like? All of those kinds of things, whether it's a manufacturing environment for Windows that go into Hondas, or it is software that gets plugged into PeopleSoft, it all has these same characteristics of that craftsmanship, of the focus on the quality. And after we've done this, after we've been through this, especially if we have a bus that's loading up and taking our team to and from the work site, you know, talk about this while it's fresh. Compare notes. I saw this. I heard that. Were there any surprises? Holy cow, I had no idea they were doing that. Or aha moments of where we have a hero, or maybe we have a zero in our organization or in our processes, right? Let's get that while it's fresh. That's a whole lot to cover. And if you've got an external facilitator, maybe you can get them to re-up all of your value stream maps overnight, or maybe you're going to have to do it yourself. The second day, we're going to go back to the Gemba again, right? And this time, we're going to do it differently. Second time we go back to the Gemba, because we've already confirmed everything that we thought about how it was going the first time, or at least we thought we did. Now we're going to go back and we're going to go upstream. We're going to start at the end and work our way up. And what we're going to do is we're going to look for some very specific things. And there are a few things that are going to happen without doubt along this way. Number one, we're going to find out that all the things they told us yesterday either weren't exactly true or weren't the whole story. And so we're going to get more about that. They're going to hear that we were listening. They're going to find out that we got it. And they're going to help us fix where we got it wrong. We're also here looking for places where we have mismatch in flow. Do we have a problem with our backlog because we don't have enough work coming in to keep a nice deep backlog? Or do we have too much flow coming in and our backlogs are growing faster than our velocity rate? Things like that. Do we have problems with complete and accurate? Yeah, we're getting that stuff in, but it's garbage. We have 50% rework. Or, you know, what's going on here with this flow situation? You know, when we talk about, you know, confirming the process and what happens, what usually happens, what percent of the time is that happens in that way? You know, what's the best case? What's the worst case? How often is the worst case? Let's get some confidence and expectations around what these results look like. And then let's really dig in and look for the opportunities for our teams and our folks to pull work into their own workspace. Let me give you an example. If you're doing SAFe or anything that does like the PIs, the program increments, and those PIs, are those teams pulling work in, or is it actually being pushed upon them in a 90-day chunk, right? Think about that at your next PI. That's an area where we're still doing the push. Many, many cases. Look for the pull. And once we get this all laid out, we're going to have some kind of a baseline, right? That's the world we live in today. There are some things that we need to do to make sure that we're doing this right and we're continuing to do it right down over time. One of the things is, if you've been around Lean in the past, you may be familiar with downtime as an acronym for the 8 different types of waste that we look for, ranging from wasted time to defects, scrap, rework, that sort of thing. We also want to make sure that we focus on and understand from a leadership perspective the implications and challenges around local optimization. How do you tell a team in the middle of the process not to improve beyond a certain point because it becomes either a waste or worse, a negative impact downstream, right? That local optimization is a real challenge for mature organizations, especially those that don't have the full view that a digital twin would enable you to see some of these relationships. And then there are some things that we just know are going to happen with people over time, right? There's some very predictable behaviors. So use our OCM tools and opportunities to focus this. Can this be applied to organizations making value-based determination, deploying technology solutions that are outcome-based? Absolutely. This does not really care about what kind of value that is. And that would very much be a tangible. So that's even easier than the intangibles. So yeah, absolutely. The technology solution, what am I getting out of this? I mean, at the most basic level, what's the investment? You know, what's that supported long-term, fully loaded investment? And what's the benefit and value I'm going to get from that? Absolutely. No, that's great, but also we need to go forward, right, Pavel?
Yeah, so the value stream mapping workshop, what just Jack outlined. So this is very crucial for us to build the model. And if you look at the way how it's happening right now, so like it's pretty labor intensive, if you see, right? So it requires dedication. You build this model, you understand the inefficiencies, you start doing them, and then kind of the reality takes its own power, and things gonna change along the way, and the model will be outdated to some at some point of time, and you need to start the exercise over again once another challenge come into play. So, and this is what is happening at the moment without digital twin. So you start over and over again this exercise. What we envision how digital twin can really help to be efficient with the process improvement, you build it once, you invest so much of energy and power to have this workshop, to collect this data, to build the model, then connect it to the data layer. And you can always see, okay, what is happening? Like whether my assumption about decision that I put into play and the change I started doing really match the reality, or we missed something. Or maybe we need to kind of diverge, but you don't need to start over again the workshop. You already have the model that kind of show you that you miss something, and you can start thinking about other ways, alternative ways to improve. So this is where continuous improvement really take off with the digital twin. Yeah, in VSOptima, we built a solution which is very simple to visualize any type of value streams that I'm going to show you in a couple of seconds. You can push the button and play with that and see how it works in future. So basically have certain prediction functionality, and you can experiment. It doesn't cost you a lot of time to double the throughput, or like see what's going to happen if you have more demand. If, like Jack mentioned, like your PI going to be twice bigger, what you need to do with your team, like how much people you need to hire. So you can play with that in a matter of seconds and find a way to improve the performance of your value stream.
Yeah, so just to put a bit of a bow on that, Pavel, I think the connecting dots here is that your tool enables value streams to be represented as a digital twin. And then you can then run that simulation. You can make changes in this. So the what if that you were alluding to at the beginning of our conversation is no longer, gee, it'd be great if I could, but here's a tool where you can take the work that you've done in value streams and input that and not lose that investment that you've made, and still use those capabilities as your maintenance back, flywheel, represented in the VSOptima tool, and then do the what ifs, right? That's what this is about.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. And you can try it. It's available online right now. Like you can play with synthetic data and simulation. If you need to build digital twin, let us know. But I can demo how it looks like. If you grant me access to rights to share the screen.
Hang on. What you need access to something?
Yeah. I need to have a rights to share the screen.
Oh. I thought you did. My apologies.
No worries. This is technology, I know.
I'm feeling really smart right now.
Apologize, guys. It usually, like, when you do the zoom, you think that it works, but sometimes.
This is not my first time using Zoom either. Okay, there we go. Try it now.
Yeah, I can share the screen. So let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Super. So this is the very simple interface. So what we have here. So this is the structure of the value stream. So it's like in contrast to what Jack showed you before. So there is no kind of a lead time structure yet, right? We just build the structural network of activities. Like this is example for the healthcare clinic. So this is customer journey. People come onto clinic, like prepare for the visit. Then they do consultation with surgeon. If there is not enough information to make a decision about surgery, they ask for additional tests. If no, then they can be monitored. Also, like after surgery, they can be monitored. You can specify different parameters, like who are the people involved in these activities, how much this costs for the company, what is the distribution of the processing time for the specific step, and what is the distribution of outcome. If there is any delay between activities, so this is kind of queue that you can simulate as well. And what is the demand? And running the simulation, you can see where the bottlenecks are. What is the performance of value stream? So on aggregate level, you can see like what is the activity ratio, throughput. And you can also, as you can see, we highlighted like 3 steps here. Those are kind of steps with issues, right? And it might be the case that, I mean, you can look at the different flows. In the different flows, those steps might be the bottlenecks. And you can explore like why it's happening. Like for instance, here, like there is a feedback loop here that in 50% of the cases, like surgeon doesn't have enough information to make a decision, like how we can move to the left side, right? Shift left strategy, but is very like common in software development world. Oh, there is like here, like continuous rework loop for monitoring visit. What can we do with that? So, and you can play with the changes. So like what I can show you, this is target state that we suggested to implement. So move to the left side, information collection prior to visit the doctor, and split the flow when you really need to do the surgery, or there is low probability to do the surgery. And you can see that like, and you have different resources involved to making those steps. And you can see that the performance of the process on value stream actually went up, the lead time became shorter, the throughput went up, and the cost per like serving the patient went down. So, and you can make those decisions and explore like what would be if in a matter of seconds. So you don't need to really make these changes in physical world before you make a decision, okay, what to change and what to change to. Yeah, there is a question.
Well, where does this data come from? Is this API driven live data? Is this manually input? Where does this data come from?
Yeah, so like online toollet is available right now, so you can play with the synthetic data. You just specify, okay, given that information that you collected on the value stream mapping exercise, what is the distribution of the specific activity, like processing time? And you can specify whether it's cyclical or batch process, how many people. So you fill this data manually. When building digital twin, it will be integrated through API to the data layer that you have. And yeah, this is a separate process. It's not available online, but let us know if you want to build. We're going to make it happen.
So you've got both right now. We can create a manual one for our research and development. And then when we get ready for production, we integrate that with the data machine of our organization or enterprise and collect live data then, right?
Yeah, yeah. So far, you can play with synthetic data and explore the behavior, explore the process itself, the value stream itself, and the tool itself. Yeah.
Awesome. Super.
Yeah, let me pause the screen share.
Good. Stunned silence. Any questions? Oh, actually, okay, here's a couple of good ones. All right. First of all, intangible values. Many of these require latent scale development and measurements. How do you apply latent variable scale development an analysis within a value stream approach. So I'm going to assume that when you say latent variable scale development, that it means that it's a dynamic data set and that we may not always have the data available in a live. It may be near, it may be real time, it may be near real time, it may be offline, right? So if that's the case and we're looking at intangible values, then that probably makes the most sense in that context. I would suggest that in that way, we're not looking at time sets in which we need to have a real tight time frame or a real narrow analysis window. That will be more of an opportunity for more fuzzy analysis and over a little bit more period of time that looks at what are the relationship of these intangibles, right? So we're not looking at how many meals did we, put into bellies. We're looking at how many lives have we have a positive impact to, right? One we can count very easily. The other one is much harder. It's intangible. It's tangible to make, someone, to give someone a meal. It's intangible to make an improvement in their lives. So how do we scale that? How do we get that more latent? Well, the only way we do that is by having that engagement and interaction with those folks, which is the best possible outcome from this approach, because then we're really engaging at the individual level, the people that we're serving, right? How did you feel about this? Did this improve your life? That's what we really care about, right? We're doing it by giving them a meal, but our values, our intangible values go beyond that. And so that is where we need to go, is how do we do that? And sometimes it's really simple. And as simple as the Survey Monkey, is this good or bad, right? Does this make you feel better? Those kinds of things. And we may even be able to do that in a non-intrusive way. I mean, let's face it, we've got cameras and measurements and facial recognition. If we're giving out free meals, do we see an improvement in people's, behavior, in how they look and how they're interacting with each other as they're leaving the center where, maybe we've given them the first hot meal they've had today.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can't rest our laurels. We got to get out and find this data.
I would chime in, here, because right in this digital twin, you cannot simulate intangible data. It's very hard to simulate perception unless you build a digital twin of people, which might be the case sometime in future with all these ChatGPT models, but we are not yet there. So I believe
our stretch goals, that's where we aspire to go, right? And there's another second question too, and I'm assuming that I got the first question understood correctly. The second question,
the second one, it's about the model itself. So the model that we run, so this is simulation model, this is probabilistic, this is stochastic model. So because we specified the distribution of behavior, it might be normal distribution. When we run simulation, you don't know the actual outcome. So this is Bayesian by default. And there is a randomness here. So you can specify how many items come into, how many customers come into clinic, and it's going to be random. So you just need to specify distribution, like an average 2 people, and your standard deviation will be 1 more, or maybe an average 10 people plus minus 5. And then each simulation, you're going to have slightly different results. When we build digital twin, we can run kind of Monte Carlo simulation easily and see the aggregate level data across all simulations. So we have a threshold, confidence threshold, that this will be the outcome. The tool that's available online just for play, to explore the kind of what digital twin is about, assuming it's not connected online with the real data, but you can play with that. Imagine it's connected. So yeah, I hope you answered the question, Kostas.
Very good. And I see your follow-up. I'd love to discuss that more down the road, but I don't think we have time for that today. Awesome questions. Awesome questions. Would like to leave you as we finish up today. If anybody else has any questions, we'd be happy to stick around as long as you want to. A couple of things from here. Hopefully, if you'd like to learn more about value stream mapping and how you might use it, we pulled a few slides from my half-day webinar, and we didn't even get to any of the worksheets. Love to spend time at a half-day webinar or a full-day workshop, including my book and the worksheets from the workbook for your application of value stream mapping in your organization. And we've got more information on these subjects. The application of this a higher level at Nationwide Insurance was documented by Carmen Diardo and I in Standing on Shoulders, a Leader's Guide to Digital Transformation. And those of you that would choose to come to a webinar would also get a copy of my book, Value Stream Mapping, The Secret of Successful Digital Transformation. Up next is just coming attractions on innovation and the design thinking approach. My upcoming book is Focused Improvement Innovation on Demand. Commercial mode off.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, awesome questions. Guys, feel free to unmute yourself. I believe if you can, feel free to ask questions loud. I
would very much invite you to come and check out Pavel's baby at app.vsoptima.com. Kick the tires, see how it works for your R&D.
Yeah, feel free to share the feedback. You know where to find me in LinkedIn. I believe I connected with all of you who joined this webinar. Would appreciate for your thoughts, what challenges you're looking to solve, if we help you to solve them, or there are certain functionality that might be necessary. And yeah, if you decided to build digital twin, this is something that we help you as a kind of separate exercise, because it requires integration with the data layer, certain data massage and data engineering to make it happen. We are very open to do that together with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing part of your day with us today. Have a great day.
Yeah, have a great day. Thank you.